Welcome to the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Right now, we're going through the entire Bible to understand it as one big, cohesive story. We're covering one book each day, and this one's about Hebrews.
A lot of people who are really into the Bible will tell you that Hebrews might be the hardest book in the whole document. But I would argue that based on what you just got done doing, going through the whole Old Testament and the whole New Testament up to this point with me, that it might not be the hardest book in the Bible for you because you are built for this. You've undertaken looking at the scriptures from a 10,000-foot view and trying to see it and hold it in your mental cache all at once. So as you go through the book of Hebrews, there's going to be tons of Old Testament, the most Old Testament that we have seen since the book of Matthew. And I'm guessing, based on the exercise that we've been through together so far, that you're going to recognize a ton of it. So I guess what I'm trying to say on the front end here is that Hebrews and your experience in reading it and reading it carefully is kind of one of the big payoffs for the energy and thought and time that you have invested together with me in trying to take in the Bible and consider it in the way we have been considering it together. If, however, you pick it up and you try to read through it and it's kind of hard, don't feel discouraged because it is covering a lot of theology. We don't know who wrote the book of Hebrews. There are some friends I have who are absolutely brilliant, scholarly. They know all of this stuff better than I'll ever know it. And they would say, it is definitely Paul. I got other friends who are absolutely brilliant, wonderful people, super well studied, and they'd say there's no way this could have been Paul. And they've all got their reasons. I don't know who wrote it. Paul signed all of his other letters, but this one isn't signed, so that makes me think maybe it wasn't Paul. But what I do know is this. Whoever wrote this document knows the disciples of Jesus, is very familiar with what is unfolding in particularly the Jewish Christian church, and whoever is writing this document hangs out with Jewish people a ton because they are assuming a mountain of Old Testament knowledge on the part of their audience. And they obviously know the Old Testament, and what we call the Old Testament, inside and out as well. This is a hyper Jesus-centric book. You know how the entire time we've been going through the Old Testament, there's all this stuff that's been jumping off the page where together we're like, whoa, look at that. That points to Jesus. This anticipates how the redemptive plan is going to work out and this promised king who is to come and this one who would be the fulfillment of the sacrificial system. Like it's all got to happen. The whole Old Testament begs for this new paradigm. It begs for this Messiah, this king, this new family of faith. Well, the book of Hebrews, the author of Hebrews, they really, really agree with that assessment. They view Jesus as the completion, just like he said about himself in Matthew 5:17. They view Jesus as the completion of everything that has come before. But that Jesus-centricness of the book of Hebrews doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It's not like Jesus is supreme and he's the best, just generically he is. No. Jesus throughout the book of Hebrews is lined up against other really significant characters in the whole story of faith. And the author of Hebrews is making it real clear. Jesus is not another link in the chain. Jesus is not another prophet, another lawgiver, another leader, another high priest, another heavenly messenger from God. No, 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 no. All of those things point to Jesus. He's not part of a cosmology of important characters in this story. He's the point of the story. The big thesis of Hebrews is that Jesus is supreme over all things, the completion of everything. But the undertone to Hebrews, the point of application to it, is you don't want to miss out on that. Whatever you're going through in life, no matter how difficult things are, because you're following Jesus, he is worth it because of that supremacy. Stay steadfast in following him. Well, the letter opens with a bang, clearly arguing in the opening lines that Jesus is I am. He is God in the flesh, that he's greater than all previous messengers from God who God has used in the past. He's not just some prophet. He's not just some angel. He is indeed God in the flesh. But here's what's crazy about it, the author of Hebrews argues, is that he has all that power, and yet he humbled himself and allowed himself to die to accomplish all the redemptive things that he set out to accomplish. And that, of course, echoes what Paul is saying in that hymn about Jesus in Philippians chapter 2 that we looked at a while back. So contrast number one in the book of Hebrews is that Jesus is greater than any other message giver, prophet, or angel, that he is God in the flesh. Comparison number two is between Jesus and Moses. Jesus isn't just another lawgiver bringing a new one to try it again because maybe the old ones just weren't quite fully developed and God needs to give it one more run. No. Jesus is the completion of the law, the fulfillment of the law. And there's a warning here in this second comparison where the author of Hebrews is like, hey, look what happens when our ancestors didn't follow Moses out in the desert. Like, they didn't even get to go to the promised land. Hey, you would not want to miss out on what comes with following this new and better Moses, that being Jesus. So, hey, no matter how difficult it is, once again, it's worth it. He's supreme. Follow Jesus. And from there, we roll into a third contrast between Jesus as high priest, the ultimate mediator between God and man, and Melchizedek, this historical Old Testament figure who was a mediator and a great high priest between God and man. Here, once again, you're getting the formula by now. The point is Jesus is supreme in this role over any human who held that position beforehand. He's the ultimate mediator and maker of right relationship between people and God. We are only made right with God through the mediating work of Christ. Don't underestimate Jesus or lump him in with other characters in this story, and in doing so, miss out. Depend on him as the initiator and mediator of union relationship with God. Then we get a fourth contrast between not a person and Jesus, but the sacrificial system and Jesus. And the point here, once again, is Jesus is greater than that. He is the perfect sacrifice for all, for everything. It covers even the stuff you forgot. This is what the sacrificial system was always begging for, always pointing to. And the author of Hebrews seems to be saying, it is a great deal. Don't overthink it. Take it. And then the whole book of Hebrews pivots into what is probably the most famous part, that being chapter 11, where you get this echo of Matthew chapter 1, the genealogy that Matthew opens with, where Matthew is saying, like, look, every single character in this story, it all points to Jesus. So it is in chapter 11, where we get a look at these rock stars of faith. But again, the point is, what they all had in common, despite their flaws, was faith. They believed God. They trusted God. They followed God. And Christ is I am in the flesh. He is God. Therefore, the author of Hebrews is saying all of these characters point to Jesus, and all of them testify to Jesus even right now. So don't miss out on this thing. Follow Christ. Hebrews has got a really interesting rhythm because it's heavyweight, historically rooted, Old Testament rooted, prophetically rooted theology, but it's also very practical. It keeps coming out of the esoteric and back down to what will you do with this? And what you should do is persist and endure, because this is the inheritance. This is what we as Jewish believers have been waiting for. So hold fast to it. When you visualize the book of Hebrews, picture that Old Testament Hall of Fame, maybe with like the gold bust sculptures of all of the different characters lined up in there. When you think about the theme, reflect on how the author of Hebrews is saying it all of it, everything points to Jesus, who is ultimate and supreme and God in the flesh. Don't miss out. And if you don't have time to read the whole thing, make sure you get those opening lines in chapter 1, verses 1 through 5, and then read from 11:1 through 12:2. Finally, no joking around here. Congratulations on the work that you've put in to level up your understanding of the Bible in a comprehensive way, to put yourself in a position where you can pick up the book of Hebrews and track with exactly what's going on. That really is quite the accomplishment, and I respect it. Way to be. We're doing the work together to position ourselves to encounter the Bible the way it's meant to be encountered. It ain't easy, but I think it's worth it. I think that merits our little level up sound. Next time around, we get the book of James. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.
This podcast is supported by many of you at patreon.com/the TMBH podcast. We're grateful because it supports our family.